Belarus has received billions of dollars of aid over the years from Russia. In return, Belarus has allowed Russia to use its territory for greater power projection. However, in recent years, their special relationship has been under stress. At the heart of this tension is Russia's desire to fully integrate Belarus into its sphere of influence. Belarus, however, wishes no less than to assert its independence. Tensions are escalating in the region, creating a significant change in this special relationship. Join us as we explore the tremendous impact this may cause in the wider geopolitical landscape. First, some historical background. After coming to power in 1994, Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko proved to be an ideal partner in serving Russia's interests. Russian President Boris Yeltsin signed a treaty of friendship with Belarus in 1995. This treaty was signed to integrate the two states economically, politically, and militarily. Earlier, Belarus had also joined Russian multilateral economic and defense projects, such as the Collective Security Treaty Organization in 1993. Belarus further entrenched itself in Moscow's axis by joining the Eurasian Economic Community, which was formed in 2000. Moscow formed these treaties to enhance its influence in the post-Soviet era. These treaties were also created to counter the NATO and EU blocs. But why didn't Belarus align with the EU regardless of neighboring allied countries? Well, Belarus signed a cooperation agreement with the EU in 1995, but the situation got worse later on. The EU excluded Belarus from neighborhood policy after the 1994 elections, stating that it does not support authoritarian regimes. That's where things turned over. Due to Lukashenko's indiscretions, it fell into the hands of Russia. The Western sanctions and severing of imports through the Baltics made the situation worse for Belarus. Moreover, banning flights into Belarus isolated its market and increased its dependency on Russia. But this pales in comparison to what happened next. In the recent wake-up of the Russian-Ukraine war, Belarus acted as a launch pad for Russian troops and its nuclear weapon close to the Ukrainian border. Russian forces carried out drills and military exercises in Belarus. Over 30,000 Russian troops were present in Belarus to invade Ukraine. After a few days into the war, Belarus put off its neutral status and gave it legal cover to host its forces and weapons. So why does Belarus hold so much importance for Russia? What is the reason behind Putin's granting billions to Lukashenko's government all these years? The answer lies in the geography of Belarus and its strategic importance for Russia and its borders. Most importantly, its southern border extends in close proximity to Kiev, Ukraine's capital. Belarus has maintained a key role in Russia's war against Ukraine. It became a staging ground for Russian military forces and tactical weapons. Belarus gave Russia a strategic advantage by allowing it to invade the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, from Belarus, which sits just 50 miles from its northern border. One interesting point in this case is that Russia would have to travel double the distance to assault Ukraine from its border. That is the reason why it was useful for the Russian invasion to swiftly capture the Ukrainian capital early in the conflict. Moving on, Belarus is Russia's buffer against NATO and Western influence, something it had desperately tried to make Ukraine as well. Since that had failed, Belarus's importance has grown even more in Moscow's eyes. You see, Moscow does not financially support any other country as it does Belarus. After the Russian-Ukraine war, Belarus had to reshape its foreign trade from the EU and Ukraine to Asia, Africa, and Russia. Presently, Russia accounts for almost 65% of the total trade share with Belarus and is the biggest trade partner. According to analysts, the interest rate is mounting, but Minsk continues to take more and more loans from Moscow. There is an intriguing fact in this story. Experts say that Russia finances Belarus in two ways. one through legal funding and the other through covert and non-official means. Russia has been providing cheap and easy loans to Belarus to fulfill its vested interests. Moscow also continues to delay the deadline for debt payments and revise the terms and conditions of the loans. Between August 2020 and February 2022, Russia has pledged $1.5 billion in loans to Belarus. Moreover, it has also lowered gas prices while delaying debt payments. But that's not all. Digging into it, the question arises: why has Lukashenko intensified his relations with Russia in 2020? After the illegal annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014, Lukashenko tried to remain neutral. He also attempted to maintain the independence of Belarus and safeguard its sovereignty. Lukashenko needed Russia as its savior when deep cracks were found in his regime in the 2020 elections. He rigged the 2020 presidential elections and won by an 80% majority, but it sparked anti-government protests nationwide. Lukashenko ordered a strict crackdown on these protests by asking for Russian support. Lukashenko turned to Moscow for political and security assurance, notwithstanding domestic and international pressure. Putin set up a special police force to aid Lukashenko in his time of crisis. In this way, Belarus became entirely dependent on Russian support. So what does the Russia-Belarus alliance mean for European security? In the post-Cold War era, NATO was expanding its uphold in Central and Eastern Europe. Belarus acted as a buffer zone between Russia and Central Europe in the Cold War. There are potential consequences for European security in the wake of the Russian-Ukraine war. Lukashenko says that Belarus will continue providing assistance to Russia until the war ends. Adding fuel to this fire, Putin also stated that Belarus is hosting nuclear weapons. Lukashenko also offered Putin permission to allow the rebellious mercenary Wagner Group to seek refuge in Belarus. This means further strengthening the collective defense between two neighbors. These developments have largely escalated tensions with neighboring EU and NATO members. Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland are the three EU members that are boosting security arrangements on their eastern borders. Here comes the importance of the Suwalki Gap and how crucial a geopolitical border it is to Russia and EU members. Lithuanian and Polish authorities have expressed concerns over this 96 kilometers of border strip for many years. They believe that Russian forces in Kaliningrad and Belarus could take this strip of borderland and cut the Baltics from their southern NATO allies. Amid all this, Belarus has faced acute international pressure over the years for supporting Russia. Since 2000, the United States and European Union have imposed sanctions against Belarus for human rights abuses and suppression of democracy. Lukashenko has also faced strict criticism from the Western media over the issue of political prisoners. EU lawmakers called on the International Court of Justice, or ICJ, in September 2023 to charge and arrest Lukashenko for war crimes in Ukraine. Now that we have wrapped things up, it has become quite evident why Belarus has to align itself with Russia for its long-term goals. As Western alliances have alienated it, Belarus has found a savior in the form of Putin, a friend and neighbor. Russia ensures political and economic support for Belarus in times of need. That is the reason Belarus may be forced to say yes to the Russian cause and the war in Ukraine. For Minsk, there is no alternative. Publicly, Lukashenko might try to play it tough, but behind closed doors, he is in no ability to negotiate on his terms with Putin. It is also imperative to note that the West has lost interest in Belarus. The US and EU also lack the ability to influence Lukashenko's actions, so they are imposing sanctions on him. The most interesting point in this story is that Belarus's economy grew by 3.5% in the first 9 months of 2023. Belarus mitigated the impact of Western economic sanctions by asking the Kremlin to subsidize its energy losses. In addition, the Ukrainian war has been a boon for its defense sector, providing it with new trade opportunities. By doing Russia's bidding in Ukraine, Belarus is improving financially in some sectors, such as arms production. So in this matter, if you're thinking that Lukashenko refuses Putin's request to utilize its military infrastructure again to attack Ukraine, you are mistaken. Belarus will never say no to Russia because of its continued dependence on it. Do you think Belarus will continue to remain an important ally to Russia as ever? Or might we see a repeat of what happened in Ukraine nearly a decade ago? If you want information on more hot topics in the geopolitical landscape, check out our next video here, and don't forget to subscribe.